نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our soul and from our sinful deeds. Those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can misguide them. Those who are not guided by the Creator, there is no guide for them. I bear witness that there is no God, there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, the Creator, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the servant and messenger. O you who believe, revere Allah as He should be revered, and die not except in submission to Him. Amma ba'd. I would like to welcome you to the Islamic Society Leading American Muslims. We have some people here today for the first time that I want to recognize. Before I do that, I just want to remind all of you that we have a few rules in the Islamic Society Leading American Muslims. And those rules are that no one is to be criticized, castigated, indicted in any way, shape, fashion, or form. We don't allow criticism. And someone came to me this morning and said, you know, I haven't been a Muslim long, I'm going to paraphrase it. And I went somewhere else, and the first thing that happened to me is I was criticized, and I said to them, you have a good day, and I left. Someone else told me this morning about the value of coming to this place where they are not criticized. Just in one morning. So it means something and it's important. And you know, we are doing dawah. And it's very important that we represent Islam in a compassionate, passionate, and loving way. Particularly when people come around and they're not familiar with our customs, they're not familiar with our traditions, they're not familiar with our teachings. We want to be respectful to them and kind to them and inviting. So the first person I'd like to recognize, or couple that I'd like to recognize, is Derek and Anna. Derek is American, but comes from Brazil, actually. And Anna, his lovely wife, he met in Brazil. Would you guys stand up? And I've known Derek for a couple of years. Derek is quite an amazing young man, and when I had my stroke, he visited me in the hospital faithfully, and somebody that I really regard is close to my heart. And Anna, because you're his, then you're close to my heart too. So we're so happy that you're here today.
Assalamu alaikum.
Who else is here for the first time today? Anybody else? Now I will warn you guys that probably within 15 minutes there'll be another 30 people here. We have this epidemic called Muslim Standard Time that people operate on, and I don't mean that in a condemning way. It's just a fact that there are a group of people that show up 15 or 20 minutes late for everything we do. So we just accept that. That's something we want to work on, inshallah. I would like to ask you to pray for the family of Dr. Jamal al-Barzinji. Dr. Barzinji was one of the founders of IIIT, which was the International Institute of Islamic Thought. My teacher, Sheikh Taha Jabbar al-Wani, was one of the founding members of that organization. He passed away this morning at 1 o'clock. So please pray for his soul. He is a scholar. He was responsible for a lot of think tanks in the United States of America. He had his PhD, I believe, if I remember correctly, in chemical engineering, but was an amazing contributor to Islam and Islamic thought in the West. So please pray for his family. Kathy Deal's father is in intensive care. Please pray for Kathy and for her family. And it seems like I'm supposed to be naming somebody else.
Sadia's grandmother?
Yes, Sadia's grandmother. I mentioned this last night. Sadia's grandmother is not well, and Sadia's mother and her other sister are actually in Pakistan now, taking care of the grandmother. So please be in prayer for them. We're trying to get green, and I know that a movement takes a long time, so we're trying to encourage you to bring a mug for your coffee and a plastic cup. Thank you. See, it's the movement has begun, and it just takes one or two, and then it just picks up. We're trying to be a green organization as much as we can because we don't want to fill up the landfill every Sunday with 70 or 80 cups. So if you can work with us, that would be great. If you would like to be able to see this class again, if you talk to May soon, and that's my sister in the right-hand corner back there with the white hijab on that is raising her hand. And she's single, by the way. And you can email her or call her at 407-288-60.
She has been the target all day.
It's that Starbucks coffee that Charlie always.
Don't blame me.
Yeah. See, now you're on this back. That's okay. Yes.
If anybody wants to bring a mug and actually wants to leave it here, we can put their name on it.
Yeah, we can do a permanent marker and put your name on the mug if you want to leave
Starbucks has they're 100% recycled mugs. They're just plastic.
Yes.
They come with a plastic lid. They're $2 a piece. And if you want to get one, I could honestly talk to my roommate. She works at Starbucks, so it'll be 30% off. Save a little bit of money, but you know, I can talk to her. Because it's
Anyway,
cheap.
let's just try to move toward being green if we can. So back to this, just in case that statement about Mesu being single threw people off. If you'd like to be able to get the classes, if you contact her by phone regarding the classes, she'll make sure that she sends out an invite. Now, if there are other people that are single and interested in getting married, you can stand up now. Because let me tell you something. I'm real serious about this. If you don't put it out there and let people know that you're interested in getting married, how are people going to know? And it's very important. So, you know, and if you don't, you know, just let me know and I'll let people know for you. Everybody got so quiet. So, you know, like, I think you got a number of people that are eligible, bachelors and bachelorettes.
Should I call people's names out that I think?
Let me know, and I mean, I'll just put you right out there. I mean, I forgot to get permission from May soon, but it's my sister, so we'll take it up in the family meeting later. We still collect non-perishable items to take to food pantries, a bag of beans, a can of food. I'd like to try to revive that. We used to take about a milk crate full of food every week to the pantry, and we've sort of somehow not doing very much of that anymore. Unbroken cell phones, if you have one, that you've tossed up in the top of the refrigerator bowl or under the bed in the shoebox or whatever, in the bottom drawer where all the junk goes. All we need is the phone. If it's not broken, we don't need the cords or anything. We use those phones for victims of domestic violence. And that's also something that Islam Inc. stands up against very strongly. We are advocates for we're advocates against domestic violence. I always find it strange when people say we're advocates for domestic violence.
Do you have any place where you can put the woman who was...
Yes, we do. We work with Harbor House because that is the only certified domestic violence shelter in the state of Florida. Anybody that tells you they're a domestic violence house, they are not. And they are likely to be sued if they tell you they are. The only certified domestic violence shelter in Central Florida is Harbor House. Now, there is a transitional house that's available, but that is not a safe place for a woman who is a victim of domestic violence. And we need to know that, folks, because we've had situations that we work with where people were at a transitional house that was Muslim and their children were kidnapped. Okay? So it's just, you got to know what you're doing in this field. And I have worked hard. I went to these organizations and they changed it. As I told them straight out, you cannot be putting yourself out there as having a domestic violence shelter. You will be sued. And then they changed it. So there's a big difference between a transitional house and a domestic violence shelter. Domestic violence shelter, the address cannot be given out. There must be a perimeter wall that is at least 6 feet. It's got to be highest level of security. Okay? And I just want to share with you that I'm on the Fatality Review Board committee. We've examined all of the fatalities in Orange County that result in situations where there's domestic violence. And I got to tell you that these situations are so painful. When we sit down, we are always law enforcement, clergy, and various therapists from various different disciplines trying to look at how can we better service these communities. DCF is there on this review committee. How can we better service this community as these things don't happen again? And let me tell you this, while I'm preaching on this, October is Domestic Violence Month. So you can count on the October potluck. I'll be talking about domestic violence in Islam. And I would encourage you to bring your friends. I would encourage you to bring anybody that you think is involved in that situation. The last time I was ever invited to preach in this masjid, what was my sermon about? Domestic violence. I haven't been asked to preach since. And that's okay. But I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. And guess what? As a result of that sermon, people came to me for help. They had never ever asked for help before. It is something that we have to address, and it affects all socioeconomic status. Don't think that because people are wealthy, there's not domestic violence. Domestic violence is everywhere. But that starts in October, and so we'll talk about that at the potluck in October. I beg you to come. Bring your friends. It's something that you should hear. And as a matter of fact, my presentation is online for Harbor House. For any Muslim woman that contacts Harbor House, that khutbah is there for them to see with the proof from the Quran and the Sunnah that this is not acceptable practice in Islam.
There is this house here, they call it.
Yes, that is a transitional house. It is not a domestic violence shelter. It's not a shelter for batterers. It is not safe. It does not have a gate around it. It's safe as a transitional house. But it is not safe for batterers. And it should not be promoted as such. There is not a domestic violence shelter in the Muslim community.
Buy a gun.
No, I don't recommend a gun because they may use it to hurt you. But as you know, I'm a non-violent person. I believe in approaching things from as passive an approach as possible. So I wouldn't recommend a gun, but I would recommend that you get educated about domestic violence and that you educate people that are in that situation and educate them that it's not their fault and they need to get help. This is the most important thing I want to say about it today. If you have a printer at home, most of us do today, when your ink cartridges or toner cartridges are empty, if you will give them to us, we turn them into Staples. Staples gives us a little money for that, and we buy office supplies with that, and that helps us curtail our expenses. Coupons for coffee and that kind of thing, if you give them to Maysoon, that also helps us curtail the cost of refreshments. And while we're on to that, I want to thank those people that bring refreshments. We really appreciate that more than we can say. It's so nice when we have physical food and then we turn around and we have the spiritual food. It's easier to absorb spiritual food if the physical department's taken care of, isn't it? But when your stomach's growling and you're embarrassed and you're hungry, your brain doesn't work as good. So all of you people who bring physical food, we appreciate that. Thank you for your comment.
I need physical food.
Yes. So, Mommy, that was a subliminal message. Don't trip on that cord, Mommy. Okay. And the potluck will be on the 24th of October at St. Luke's United Methodist Church. So mark your calendar for that and make sure. Please RSVP. It helps us with understanding how much cutlery we need, plastic spoons, forks, knives, all that kind of stuff.
We got that.
All right, alhamdulillah. But it does help us to know how many people are coming so that we sort of know what to do. We had a wonderful potluck on Saturday last night. Yeah. Thank you, folks. Alhamdulillah. So, does anybody want to share what we've been talking about and how it might have affected your life in, say, the last week of class? Don't everybody jump at one time because the camera's rolling.
What is your question?
Would anyone like to share what they learned in last week's class? What they did
Oh,
learn?
last night.
Last week's class.
Oh, purify.
Purity. All right, yes. About being pure, right? Good. Okay, alhamdulillah. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll get started. Purification is an obligation in Islam. So I'm going to recap just for a moment a little bit about what I talked about last night. In that our heart fluctuates tremendously, right? One day we might be cold-hearted, one day we might be warm-hearted, one day we might be hard-hearted, one day we might be soft-hearted or tender-hearted. Everybody is understanding what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. So the heart fluctuates, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's a piece of flesh in the heart that if it's purified, it will produce good results. And we look at that piece of the heart that is connected to the fitrat of Allah. Now that fitrat of Allah is that ruh, that spirit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed into your mother's womb at about 120 days into gestation. It's that which makes us different from animals. Because we have a soul. And Allah breathed that soul into our mother's womb. But that soul was created when? That soul was actually created around the time that Adam was created. Remember in Surah 7, there's a verse in the Quran that talks about your soul testifying that there's one God before it was ever placed in a mother's womb. All the souls, all the unborn children in the world, their souls are already there in the spiritual dimension. They just have not been placed. So for every one of you here that will have a baby in the future, the soul is just waiting to be placed. But that soul has already testified that there's one God, one Creator. And it's that part of yourself that is the self-approaching soul. It's that part that's always calling you back to God. It's that part that makes the atheist say, oh my God, when it hurts itself. They'll tell you, I don't believe in God, but then when they hurt themselves, they call on God. So there is an innate piece of the human being that we refer to as the fitrat of Allah, that we were all born with. And I often say this, but I think it's a reminder that must be done. 85% of the people in this room came out of their mother's womb like this, in prostration to God, that looks like the position of prayer called sujood. Unless you were a breech baby or a cesarean, you came out sort of like this, in submission to God, bowing to God, surrendering your head, your thoughts, anything that you would learn, your knowledge to God. And Allah said, let there be no change in this. So purification is an obligation for Muslims. And this is so important for those people who have embraced this religion and for those people who were born in this religion and who tell me that they became cultural Muslims. For you to understand that purification is an obligation. Say that for me. Purification is an obligation. Say it again.
Purification is an obligation.
And I'm going to endeavor to prove that to you from the Quran and the Sunnah, okay? Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the opening chapter of the Holy Quran, chapter 1, teaches us that the attitude of seekers of truth is, you alone do we worship, and you alone do we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, that path with which we were born on, the path of those who have received your grace, not the path of those who have brought down wrath, nor those who have wandered astray. We say this 17 times a day as Muslims. Right? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Yes. So, Surah Baqarah, verses 2 through 5. This is the book, and in it guidance sure, without doubt, to those who are cautious and mindful of Allah. So we know that this final revelation came down, that Allah promised to guard and protect and preserve, that it would never be defiled. We know that this book is the most memorized book in the world today. We know that this book has not been defiled. We know that if you recite this book with tajweed, and anyone knows the Quran, they will know that you are reciting tajweed. If you are an Arabic speaker and someone is reciting Quran, you know that this is Quran and not just Arabic. Because you'll know that some people will see Maliki Yawmiddin, and Ma will be 2 beats and Deen will be 4 beats. And you can recognize it different to just language. Am I supposed to dance to that? All right. It sounds like a little puppet dance.
Mario Brothers.
So, if you are looking for undefiled guidance, the textbooks for life, the instruction book for life, the manual for life, then Allah said, here it is, and there's no doubt about it. There's absolute no doubt. Now, one of the people that I worked with in the last 10 years that became Muslim said that when they read this verse, it's what made them become a Muslim. This is a book wherein there's no doubt. And this person later said, the first time I heard a 12-year-old that had memorized the whole Quran, and then I learned that it wasn't their mother language, and that they were reciting it apparently with perfection. It spoke highly to me. You will not find, I don't believe, anyone who has memorized other holy books, even in English. You might find 1 or 2 people maybe in the world. We have 40 people in this community, at least, that have memorized the whole Quran. And I'm talking about youth that we've developed right upstairs in the school. Not including the others that memorized it before. Now, in order to be purified, and this, I want you to really, really digest this, you must have accurate knowledge. And this is why Sheikh Google is so dangerous. Because I'll share with you what happened to me. When I began to think that I wanted to embrace Islam, I went to a bookstore and I bought books. And the very first book that I bought were Imam Ghazali's 4 volumes, Ulum-ul-Din. Thank God.
We went all the way up there. I was pretty impressed.
But you know what the other book was about? It was about a Sufi order that drinks wine. And I drank that and I thought, well, now I'm confused. I thought Muslims don't drink.
You read that. You didn't drink it.
I mean, yes, thank you, buddy. I read that book. Thank you. I read that book. And I went to the person that I'd been talking to about Islam and I said, look, man, I read about these people and they drink. I thought it was prohibited.
Were you in Africa at this time?
No, I was in California. Yeah, on the West Coast. Santa Monica. So, He said, no, no, no. He said, those are people that have deviated from the truth. So this is the danger. This is why you need a teacher. And this is why, by the way, there's a prayer class at 10 o'clock that I teach right now. And if you are not feeling real good about your prayer life, I would encourage you to come at 10 in the morning on Sundays to this class on prayer. Yes, brother? It's right here. Yeah. We go from 10 to 10:45. I know it's a lot to take in one day. But for the last 2 Sundays, we've been looking at just the benefits of prayer. Before I start teaching my students how to pray, I want to teach them what the benefits are. How many people buy things because you see the benefits in it? Now, would you buy something if somebody didn't show you the benefits? Who's the salesperson? Yeah. But most things, if there's no benefit in it, why would you buy it? Would you? Coupons? For the most part, people are looking for benefit in something. That's why, isn't that predominantly what supply and demand is about? There's a benefit in something, so we want it. So pure knowledge is required for purification. For example, if I learn that it is not necessary to pray to be a Muslim, and there were 5 people at the prayer class this morning, how astray will I be? Very. Because Islam is built on salah. It is the essential of worship. If you don't pray, you don't stay. In another hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spoke about charity, he said virtually the same thing. The Prophet ﷺ said, and by the way, for those of you who are here for the first time, when I say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I'm asking for God's peace on the Prophet. We do not say Jesus without saying alayhi salam, or Moses without saying alayhi salam, or David without saying alayhi salam, because those people are of a special status. So we respect them. They're not like common people like John and Bob and Joe. And so after those names we don't have to say it. But when it comes to a prophet, we say alayhi salam. So just so you know what I'm saying, peace and blessings be upon them. Whoever gives in charity what is equivalent to a date, and I'm not talking about what a guy and a girl going out. I'm talking about a fruit, okay? It's okay to laugh. I know it's early, maybe there's still some coffee over there. A date's a little fruit. A lot of people, before I became a Muslim, to my knowledge, I never had a date in my life. That kind of date. I didn't have the kind that falls off a tree. The fruit. Okay. So, whoever gives in charity what is equivalent to a date, that is from his pure earnings, and Allah only accepts what is pure, then Allah takes it with his right hand. And we always know that the right hand is a symbolic hermeneutics for the hand of blessing. When we take something from the right hand, we know that as Muslims, we give people food with the right hand. We know that when we go to clean ourselves in the bathroom, we use the left hand, for example. We don't use the right hand. You know, I mean, how many people would want me to shake your hand if you knew that I'd use this hand to clean myself with? Not many people would like that too much. Even if I used antibacterial soap, if they knew that that's what I had done, they wouldn't be too happy about me shaking their hand, right? So there's a lot of significance in the right hand, in the hermeneutics of the right hand. This hadith is not simply talking about legal and pure wealth, it's also talking about knowledge. So when we talk about our earnings, a lot of hermeneutics in the Quran, the science of the deeper meaning of the Quran, when we talk about wealth, knowledge is wealth. Today, it took people years to learn it, but I think about 5 or 7 years ago, and I can't remember who it was, coined the statement that knowledge is power. The Prophet Muhammad was saying this 1400 years ago. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is wealth. You are not going to be able to get wealthy if you don't have the knowledge of something. Those people that have attained wealth had a knowledge of something. The same way with spirituality. If you do not have accurate knowledge, you see there's a fallacy. Some of you are going to be stunned by what I'm about to say. But a lot of us were taught growing up that practice makes perfect. That's not true. And let me tell you why it's not. Now, Kareem got his brown belt yesterday with 3 accolades. He's the youngest one tested and he got his black belt yesterday. Let's give him a hand. Brown belt. Brown belt.
He did get the black tape on the brown belt, which goes for going above and beyond.
That's right, going above and beyond. Now, if he had not done the katas correctly, would he have gotten that?
No.
No. So, it's perfect practice that brings perfection. Because let me tell you, I remember one thing about baseball. Please don't make fun of me if I get it wrong. Apparently you're supposed to hold a baseball sort of like this, right?
Yeah.
Anybody here know about baseball? Then you bring it back and you let it go like that, right?
Yes.
Now what if I say, no, I can do it. I can do this thing, man. And I hold the ball like the whole grip. Will I get the same result?
No.
But I can practice it over and over and over again. I will never get it perfect. I'll never be the pitcher on the team. Let's just say that. I'm very careful what I say about sports because we all know I'm not a
I played
sportsman.
baseball and I won.
You played and you won. I believe that. You didn't hurt anybody with the bat, right?
No, I was my team.
I believe that. So, Allah does not accept any deed unless it is free from any aspect that would ruin it. This is so important. When we look at Allah as pure and He only accepts that which is pure. This comes from Hadith Qudsi, which is a hadith that came from Allah. The Hadith Qudsis usually begin with Allah said. So they are a hadith that you don't have to question their authenticity because Allah said it. Allah is pure and He only accepts that which is pure. So now if I get up here and I pray like this, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, let me see, did I turn that light off in my bedroom? Oh, I can't remember if I paid that MasterCard bill or not. And I'm doing all this stuff. Am I praying in a pure way? No. Or I'm thinking about the cat or anything else. Don't talk about that. Alright. But Allah is pure. And this is a large portion of what we're talking about in the prayer class in the morning is that you can't just pray ritualistically. The same way that when you sacrifice in the month of for Eid al-Adha, if the slaughter is not done with the right conditions, it's not pure. The same way with the fasting. This year we talked a lot about fasting with the right spirit, with the right ruh, with the right conditions, with the right form. It goes right back to the example of karate. If the katas are not done with the right form and the right timing even, you will get demerits. The same way with the prayer. Every single movement of the prayer, there's stillness required. And that's one of the arcans of the prayer. Yes, sister?
Yeah, so if you have somebody else do a deed for you, you conceive the deed, but you're not capable of doing it yourself, like, say, the slaughter, and your intention is for purity, but they don't do it in a pure way.
It's not on you. It's not on
Okay,
you.
so Allah accepts your intention is
Exactly.
pure.
For example, last week Sharon talked about someone hurting an animal when they were slaughtering it. Your intention was that you hired somebody to do the slaughter for you. Your intention is taken care of. Your intention was pure. That person who slaughters incorrectly has a responsibility to learn how to slaughter correctly. But it's not on you what they do. The only exception to that rule in Islam is, and this is why leadership is so looking for the word. There's so much responsibility in leadership. For example, if I'm leading the prayer in the masjid and 1,000 people are praying behind me, and I pray it perfectly, I get the reward of 1,000 people's prayers. If I pray it wrong, they don't lose the reward, but I am responsible for 1,000 mistakes. So, you see, this is why, it's very sad, this is why we should really respect our imams. Because the responsibility, let me tell you that no other religion on the face of this earth requires a man to work 7 days, lead 5 prayers a day, every funeral in the community, every wedding in the community, and then everybody's grabbing him every time he goes to pray. How many people do you know in the world that work from Fajr to Isha, 7 days a week for $30,000 a year? Our imams are the poorest paid clergy in the world, and they work the most. And that shows you that we don't value them. As a matter of fact, what's really sad is that you can have a preacher that is having an affair with somebody in the choir, and there will be people praising him. But you have an imam that isn't there for somebody immediately when they want them, and the community will be gossiping about that imam. And every one of you have heard it. Don't even tell me yet. Unless you just came today for the first time, you've heard it.